the Humboldt Current creates a weather system that allows no rainfall. Helium-3 in rocks shows that the process of desiccation began 23 million years ago. The rising Andes, 10 million years ago, made it drier still. The investigation would seem to be conclusive. Atacama has been a barren, essentially rainless landscape for millions of years. But then, something happened to blow that conclusion wide open. Tiny shards of stone revealed that an ancient civilization once lived here. But how could people live in the world's driest desert? The Atacama Desert is by far the driest place on Earth. And by piecing together the evidence, scientists believed it had been so for millions of years. Yet, at a remote site called Guanaqueros, paleoecologist Claudio Latorre made an intriguing discovery which paints a more complex picture.
This is an extraordinary find, and this was probably a little knife or a scraper that's been broken off and discarded. That's probably still cut.
To the untrained eye, it looks like a simple rock shard, but Latorre can see it's been worked into a tool. And he's found hundreds of them. They're clues that reveal ancient humans once lived here.
This was not just a temporary residence. This was something where people were living and working and banging away at rocks and making artifacts and living off this landscape, using the resources at hand.
As water is essential for life, it seems impossible that any kind of plant, animal, or human life could survive here. Latorre suspects that some regions of this 57,000 square mile desert were once much wetter. Not millions of years ago, but during the time humans walked the earth. In 1997, he set off on a mission to hunt for evidence. Today, he's retracing that journey. Changes in the climate can be seen in the rocks, so Latorre examines the cliff layer by layer. He finds a crucial piece of evidence.
This is actually where the interesting part of the story comes in.
This chalky rock is called diatomite. It's made from the crushed remains of fossilized algae, microscopic life forms which only live in fresh water.
What this rock is telling us is that we had basically a wetland. Whereas you look at the landscape across the day, and we see that it's basically about as dry as you can get.
Sometime in the past, there was water on the surface of the desert. Latorre's next task was to find out when. Radiocarbon dating is one of the most accurate methods of dating. But using this method means sampling something organic. So Latorre combed the desert for clues.
The way we work is basically poking our heads into every little hole and crevice that we can find. When we found this place, we couldn't believe our eyes.
He accidentally and luckily stumbled upon the most important piece of evidence in this investigation. At the back of the cave was a vast nest. It's made from the feces of thousands of generations of tiny mammals. The size and shape of the pellets told Latorre those animals were chinchilla rats. And it also contained the critical clue he was searching for. organic material.
When we found this site, one of the most exciting discoveries that we made was the fact that it's full of grasses. Now look across the landscape today and tell me where those grasses are. And we immediately knew that we were talking about some major vegetation change.
This grass looks as fresh and crisp as if it was collected yesterday. But when Latorre carbon-dated grass from the nest, what he found was amazing. The grass was more than 11,000 years old.
What I have in my hands here is an ancient ecosystem. This is about as clear an indicator you can get, better than anything else you can think of, that water increased in the past in this area.
The nest reveals strong evidence that plants and mammals did exist here. And they weren't alone. Underneath the thick layer of nest is another layer, rich with tiny handmade tools.
If we look around, we can find actually evidence of this past human occupation. There's just full of little shards here on the floor.
Some regions of Atacama have been constantly dry for 23 million years. But this evidence shows that other regions, like Guanacaros, were very different 11,000 years ago. It's a fossilized snapshot of a diverse ecosystem briefly bursting into life. Grasses grow and wetlands flourish in this wetter time. Tiny mammals thrive and breed, while game, like vicuña and llamas, meant humans could live in this rich and fertile environment.
So it's wonderful to know that by looking at something as mundane as a rodent nest, you can actually find clues that enabled you to understand the past human colonization of the Atacama Desert, which is no mean feat in itself, given the fact that it's such a harsh climate today.
The date of the rat's nest gives scientists a possible theory of where the water came from. 11,000 years ago, the last ice age was at an end. The global climate was changing. More rain fell high in the Andes, flowing down to the desert in rivers. In some places, groundwater pooled, forming wetlands. Others remained untouched by water, as they had for millions of years. But just 1,000 years later, the climate changed again. Rivers dried up, grasses died, rats and humans disappeared. Now every drop of groundwater has been sucked down into the parched earth. Latorre demonstrates how deep that water is today.
So just to give you an idea of how much change has gone on since the wetland was formerly at the surface, here's a little experiment that we can do. This is a well, and I'll drop this little rock, and we're going to count, and we're going to see how long it takes for that rock to hit the water. So that takes almost 4 seconds to reach the water. That's well over 200 feet below the surface is where the water table is today. It's about as dry as it gets. It's what we call absolute desert. No plants, no wildlife, nothing. No surface running water whatsoever.
The investigation of this driest place on Earth took a surprising turn. Tools show humans lived here. Diatomite reveals the climate was once wetter. Rat's dung and grass dates a diverse ecosystem to 11,000 years ago.